Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and earn even more money. All in one place, and it's for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup looks like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. Best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we feel like having options like video podcasts, Q&A, and polls has let us be creative on a whole other level. I highly recommend you give it a try. So download Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. What is up, X's and T podcast fans? Welcome back. We're back at it again, and we have Hope and Fyscher back with us today. And if there's one thing that you guys have learned from Hope and Fyscher is how passionate they are about cults, how they even have things in their home that say that they are anti-ideology. And I really wanted to bring them back to talk about this topic because we've talked about Worldwide. You've now kind of been introduced to URA. We've really talked a little bit about Brit Worldwide. These are all lines of affiliation for Amway. And the one thing that all these places have in common, in addition to Amway, is the way that they are indoctrinating people into these groups. So first and foremost, I do have to say this is based on personal experiences. We are referencing different websites. This is for fair use and commentary purposes. So if we reference a website, we are going to comment on it. And again, we're talking about Worldwide Dream Builders, Brit Worldwide, URA, any line of affiliation. It's based on personal experiences. If we reference any other cults, man, that's again personal opinion. Sorry, don't sue me. So with that being said, I would love to bring in Hope and Fyscher. Hey, you guys.
Oh,
Hi.
How's it going up in Canada?
Good.
It's hot.
it's actually very hot. Everything's on
It's
fire.
actually hot.
And
Yeah,
Oh,
it's like,
man.
I
And
guess it's
everything's
like
dry.
30 degrees, which would be like, I think like 80 something, 86 Fahrenheit. It's really
Yeah.
hot. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So for this topic, you guys, like I mentioned, are so passionate about this topic. So Fyscher, I know that you said once you guys left Worldwide, you guys did a huge deep dive into all of these other cults and finding out that it's like, wow, this is so much like what I went through. Tell me a little bit about the first thing that you looked into and when did you really start to realize that not only did you feel that Worldwide was a cult-like environment, but what really solidified that for you guys?
I don't know.
Mine was definitely love and respect. That's kind of what this is it leads into kind of a bit of a rabbit hole, but basically love and respect. I posted, I don't know if you've ever heard of MBTI, like a personality, whatever MBTI, but I find it very interesting. So I posted in this group on Facebook of women with my similar personality type. And I was like, hey, anybody else read Love and Respect and hate this book? And then somebody pointed me to a blog and was like, read this blog from this woman who has the same personality as us. And she talks about this book. So I found that blog and I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I'm not crazy. I'm not wrong for thinking this book is wrong. So I started to get pretty into that, which then brought in the whole religious cult, if that makes sense, that kind of when you have churches that aren't very healthy and
Not aligned properly.
yeah, not
to what
aligned
their
properly,
values are.
they aren't actually doing biblical teachings. They're trying to just pick what they want from the Bible instead of actually just being a good person like Christ, and I looked into this blog, which created kind of a mindset of Worldwide used religion to kind of overpower us a little bit, this greater good. It wasn't necessarily religion itself. It wasn't Christianity itself. It was a type of religion. And that's what kind of got me into it, which then brought Fyscher into learning about religious ideology.
Right. So I grew up going to a church when I was a small town church when I was right up until I was about 10, maybe 12 years old. So the environment that Worldwide was not particularly foreign to me. So, the fact that Hope all of a sudden was like something wasn't sitting right with her. She was kind of the canary in the coal mine. When she was saying, this doesn't sit right with me, I don't really understand this, I was more like, well, that's kind of the point, is you're changing your understanding. You're not right. If your brain was right, we wouldn't be in this mess type thing. It's like, we need Worldwide, blah, 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 right? And that was, it was, I want to say that the religious side of things made it harder for me to notice because of the way my childhood was, and Hope was not used to that. So it was jarring to her, but it felt almost comfortable to me in a weird way about trying to be outside of my own brain and listening to others, which I found out was a terrible thing to do. You need to make sure that your judgments are accurate and that you understand what's going on all the time. That's kind of the hallmark of, I don't really want to say free thinking, but I guess in this context it probably would be. But yeah, like I was slow to adopt that, but I started noticing things like my gut would tell me things were not right. It's like I was supposed to listen to John because he had all the facts and I didn't, and I was supposed to listen to what he said and stuff like that. And even though I felt like I didn't understand, the understanding would come later, right? And I started trusting in Hope more and trusting less in his teachings, because I started to see, wait a second, the logic isn't there, or this doesn't really make any sense if I really thought about it. And that's kind of where I started to wake up from it. And it was not long after that that I started to say, all right, this guy's not very credible, because I just kind of took him at face value as if he had everything. And then it was revealed to me later that he didn't quite have everything and he was in the pursuit of it himself. But at that point, neither of us really understood what we were doing. We were just listening. And that's kind of where it kind of scared me a little bit.
Yeah. No, love and respect. That would definitely, that would make anybody, I feel like, question their whole life. At least every female that I have spoken to, who I've mentioned the book to, has definitely said that this book either negatively impacted them like it did for you, Hope, or that it just made them feel uneasy. And that's what was kind of the catalyst to them not trusting Worldwide as much.
Yes. So I just want to clarify, love and respect, that type of teaching wasn't comfortable for me. That was one of those things where I said, okay, well, I guess this pastor knows. He knows how to have a happy, you know what I mean? It's like, this stuff doesn't make any sense to me. I don't see how I would be happy if this was done to me, but I guess this is a comfortable dynamic for both people, because I certainly felt like I was getting more than my fair share of the pie, if that makes sense. Like I was getting my way and she wasn't able to complain type thing. So, and I was like, well, this is great. So she must get her own version of the way I feel, but she just needs to find her groove into that. And that never happened. And she just it was like, this isn't fair. I don't like this, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, you just need to start doing it, because, you'll start to feel okay with this type thing. And I thought she was going to, it was just very different in the way I was doing it. And once I realized that was there to stay, and that's just how she was supposed to get used to feeling, then I went, okay, this isn't right. And especially the last chapter of the book, it had to do with sex or something. It's like, I remember clarifying to Hope, being like, this is very weird. Like, there was 2 points in the book that I went, I don't agree with this. One was for sure how they addressed sex in marriage and how men are, which is, I was like, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel, but I don't know if I could ever get on board with this. And the second one was how the wife was supposed to react to when the man does something bad, like wet towels. Yeah. So I was like, I thought he was totally in the blame. I thought he was being a baby, but in the book, he was justifying his actions and explaining how the wife could do better. And I was like, nah, I was like, if it were me, and if people were to listen and say, well, this towel thing is an example, a valid example, first of all, then, it's like, you have to water that stuff down, like you said, to be able to swallow it. It's like, because that stuff, it didn't sit right with me, but I had to tell myself, I'm not supposed to believe this. I'm supposed to believe it later, which is not good. Yeah.
So brainwashed.
Oh, yeah. And like we mentioned before, the reason why men tend to feel the way that they feel they're supposed to is because Worldwide pushes that agenda. There's like most of the people that I've seen who've left, like you, Fyscher, have really kind of taken a look on the inside and were like, oh shit, like this is not moral for me. This does not work in my relationship or our our dynamic.
These aren't my
But they
values.
made you feel, but they made you feel like you had to, because if you didn't, you weren't a man. You were not a worldwide dream builder husband or future
or you're
diamond
not
or
going to do the
whatever.
5-year plan. You're not going to get, the nice car and the diamond lifestyle, and you're not going to retire your parents or take care of your kids. Don't you want that? And I'm like, oh, it's terrible.
Yeah, exactly. And for that to cause question, that's amazing, because I like I mentioned before, wasn't forced to read that book. I really didn't even know anything about it, but I'm glad I did not read it while I was in the business, because I had already had this vision of who I was supposed to be, but that's not me. Like you, Hope, I'm very dominant, and that's how I like to be. That's how I was taught to be. That's my personality. And when we started to look further into that book, we noticed a lot of the ideology that was being pushed into it, like men being in control, women being inferior. And that's where, like you guys said, you started to look elsewhere. Like how was it just Worldwide that's teaching this? And then you start to learn about the other lines of affiliation, like URA. You start to learn about BWW, which is Brit Worldwide. And those are only 3 of the many
I know.
lines of
And of course,
affiliation
that comes
for
out
Amway.
afterwards. After you leave, you find out all those are in existence, right?
Yeah. And then you start to see, okay, what about outside of the lines of affiliation of Amway? And I think we talked about this, we just did actually, before we started this, was when we were all in the business at the same time, the documentary Wild Wild Country came out. And I'm from Oregon, so I watched the documentary, and I remember just being so captivated by it and being like, how did these people get so involved in something that seems so horrendous? Like my mom was, around during that time, and she would say we just didn't talk to people who wore red because we didn't want that sort of association. And then when I was reading it, or when I was listening to it, it's like, how did they do that? But then after you like leave Worldwide and you kind of have a fresh mind, you're like, I was a part of something that may not have been exactly the same, but they all have the same principles. And then you start looking into Jonestown. Yeah, exactly.
The weird thing is not weird, I guess, but in our province, Alberta, in our grade 12 curriculum is all about ideology. That is the curriculum, is about ideology. So we learned about that our entire grade 12 year. And I
must not have paid attention.
We were in the same class for that too, so I think that's super funny. But that's when we learned about like World War II and Hitler's following. Stuff like that, Marxism, how they got followers to follow Marxism, and Stalin's Russia, like all of these things, and how you can convince a mass group of people to follow something evil and bad. And it is it's insane, and it's a huge scale. Like you can even see it now, like in the States and Canada too, where we have this divide between like conservative and liberal right now, where it's like you either are one or the other. And that's ideology, is you're so convinced that you have to be like, you have to think a certain way and be a certain way because somebody said to be a certain way. It's human nature to want to be included into something. So if you have somebody who's, I don't know, really like wears like the hats, the mega hats, and like has all the flags. I don't know. I've never seen one, but just imagining what they look like, and just
you
being
can
like,
imagine.
I can't imagine. Like I can kind of imagine what they look like, but
I've seen them.
Because we have the same in Canada, but it's different. It's like fuck Trudeau, like all these like terrible things, like the trucker convoy, and they like hang Canadian flags upside down. Like we have like somewhat of the same thing where we have, and that's ideology. That's like a cult mindset, and having a one hive mind kind of environment. And it's so prevalent even in our society that it's like, how guilty can we feel for falling for something like a cult?
Everywhere.
When we see it everywhere, you can see it like being like, are you the people that stormed to the Capitol, or are you for like the Black Lives Matter riots? Because you're one of the two.
One?
Like which one are you? And it's like, you can be, most of us aren't on either end of those extremes. Most of us just kind of are like, okay, we have our thoughts and feelings, but for some reason there's such a divide. and that's ideology. I think that's wild.
Yes, yeah. And the act so the by definition, ideology is a system of ideas and ideals, especially one which forms the basis of economic or political theory and policy. And I'm saying that just for anybody who's out there who doesn't necessarily know what ideology is, but it's very much like you said, that hive mindset
Principles
where you
first.
all
Yeah.
Yep. And you all have that same thought because like one person on top is teaching you these concepts. And the hard part about it is you're so right. There really is one side or the other. It's very hard to just be kind of in the middle where you're like you said, you have your thoughts and feelings and you're not on either of those extreme sides. The way that we kind of get pulled into these cult like environments or actual cults, like you think about it and you look at it from the outside, you're like, this is crazy, how are these people involved in this? It's not so insane to think about though, because you're talking about like the way that we all got into the business. It was your guys's she was the one who was in the business, right?
Yeah,
or her friend or something.
Yeah, my stepmom's friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. And mine was like a middle school, high school friend. These are people that we knew, that we thought we could trust, that by, all accounts had good intentions and I think like you mentioned in one of the episodes, Fyscher, is we talk so negatively about these people, but when we're passionate about it. We believe in it. We really think we are going to help the next person who we talk to, that they need this.
And I think I know why too. So when we first met Carol, she had the same values we did. Carol had the same values we did. It was reasonable. She wanted to take care of her family. She wanted to become financially stable. She had all these reasonable things that we did. And that was the hook that got us in, right? And then somewhere along the line, once we actually were considered independent business owners and we weren't really the tutorial stage, for lack of a better term, was over and we were in the business, that's when our values started getting hijacked. So we were seeing the world through, like, going back to the definition of ideology, is a set of principles that you follow that explain the economy or other things, right? But they say it's a set of principles that explain the way the world is, and which is backwards, right? So, but at the same time, most people have to, in order to even understand the world, you have to have kind of a narrative first. Like if you want to pick up a cup, you have to know that you want to pick up the cup first. Otherwise, anything could be a cup. A puddle could be a cup, a bowl could be a cup, but if you want a cup, you have to find a cup first. So, and that could be like, you want to take care of your family first. So you're going to look for avenues to take care of your family. Not insane, right? Very practical. But when you start listening to somebody and they say, these are the principles for how the world works, and those principles are lies, the entire trunk of the tree trunk that is your understanding of the world is rotten at that point. So, and that's what happened to us, is me, Carol and us, we had the same values. And then when we started talking to John and Jane and Rhiannon and Nolan, they were telling us things like, your understanding, your principles, your values are wrong. And this is how they should be if you want to be successful in 5 years. Easy trick, right? Easy bait and switch. Just listen to me. My advice is better. But then the principles they give you are like in this freedom of mind, what's his name? Stephen Hasan's BITE model. So, and that's what they start feeding you, is things like the clothing you wear, what you eat, how much sleep you get, where your financial dependence, put it in them, aka ditto, right? And they put it under the guise of, well, you got to rise and grind, right? That's why you don't sleep. You can sleep when you're dead, or you can sleep when you're done, right? But all of those principles that you guide your whole life off are tricks. So then your whole life becomes how can I rationalize what I see to these fake principles, right? Like you go and see the world and you go, all right, the sky is blue, birds are real, clouds are going in the sky. But if you have wrong principles, then you can see these clouds in the sky and go, see, this is exactly why they're chemtrails. Or I told you birds aren't real, and stuff like that. It's like, well, the principles first are wrong, and then you confirm what you see, or you have to confirm what you see as back to those principles. And that's how you can fall for ideology, is you start seeing, you literally see the world as a way of confirming these fake principles, which is, it's crazy to me how it's an easy thing to let happen to you if you're dependent on someone else and the other person is bad. You know what I mean? It's like, because there's such thing as good role models, but you have to know what a good role model is. So it's that's why people, especially young people, get tricked, is because they look for role models and they find out, well, I'm not quite good enough at thinking on my own. I don't have my own values is a big one. I can't compare against my values this sponsor's values to see if they make logical sense, right? If you don't have those values, you just adopt someone else's. And I remember Nolan said that lots. He said, if you stand for nothing, you'll fall for anything, which is so poetic that he said that, is because everyone who gets sucked into these things doesn't have their own values. They don't have their own, and that's why they're looking for it. And that's why they get screwed over, because they don't.
Yeah, they do. They deliberately change your perspective on life. And they do it in a way that is so manipulative. And kind of
so
just
you
going
lie
back
to your family and you don't listen to them and stuff, because part of what they say, one of the principles they say is that I'm right and everyone else is wrong. Get that straight. And then that way you close your ears off from anyone else. So it's just them in your ear. And that's one of the first principles they teach you, which is like, it's cunning is what it is.
It is. So I'm going to go back to your reference here about Stephen Hassan's bite model. So again, this is for fair use commentary purposes, but he has this website and I will link it in the episode notes as well as on Instagram. But it's a website called freedomofmind.com. Stephen Hassan was in a cult, I believe, in the 70s, and he went deep into what cults are. And he has what he calls the bite model. So it's behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. And these are all things that happen very, very gradually. It's not like we all joined worldwide and they were like, okay, you're going to stop talking to your family right now. They started as the first initial thought towards it, right? You're talking about when you meet them, they don't tell you it's Amway right away. They sit down and then they kind of inspire you. They use that really inspirational jargon where, what are your goals in life? Are you headed this direction? Would you rather pick up manure for 5 years to become wealthy? Like, who doesn't love that idea? Nobody, with your bare hands. And they give it these dramatic things and they say, what are you not willing to do to make this money? And then, like you said, it goes into, this is how you can take care of your family. This is literally your entire future. That's how they hook you. Then they take you to meet their mentors, meet their leaders, and that's when you meet somebody who's dressed up in business attire, who looks like they could own a business. They dress and they talk and they impress like they're millionaires. Like you said before, it's very ambiguous. You don't know who the hell you're seeing, because then they start what they call edifying. And I know it's a real word, but it's definitely like verbiage that it's really
double
only
speak in worldwide. Yes.
And they edify these people to a point where you believe that your first meeting, because you have no idea what's going on, they maybe show you the cash flow quadrant, which is the big business, independent business. I don't know. It
was employment, investing, big business, or small business and big business. That's
there you go.
That's what's his name? Kiyosaki.
Robert Kiyosaki. Yeah. And then they have you read this book. For my line of sponsorship, they had us read The Go-Giver. It doesn't seem anything. It's a very like ideology based book. It's, do you believe in these concepts that they're teaching you in this book? Because they decided that they wanted to change from the business of the 21st century, because that book seemed too businessy. It was putting off bad vibes. So they changed to a book that had nothing to do with business. And then you go to this big meeting where you could be seeing.
Sorry, let me jump in. So the Go-Giver is really good because they went away from the business model side of things, which is what they wanted to do, but they secretly doubled down on the mindset side of things. So they prime you for the rise and grind stuff. And if you work, you can get what you want. And which the Go-Giver is a successful book in its own right, because that is a true principle, right? But they hijack it. They say, well, we want, if you could work, would you? And if people would, then they say, here's an avenue, but this avenue is BS, right? And then they say, well, you said you would, so do it, right? And then they get you running on this treadmill to nowhere. And but anyway, you're saying it's like they double down on that Go-Giver, which is the mindset side. So
and that's where they also talk about that in those big first look meetings. You're seeing somebody like my first time seeing a board plan was Taylor, the club owner, and he really spoke in a way where it was talking about his failures. He was talking about how the work grind was not for him, how he was able to build a cash flow to secure his his family a future and, quote, free his wife from a traditional 9-to-5 job to be, you know, a future stay-at-home mother. She didn't have a child back then. And you see all of that and you're like, damn, that is inspirational. They do nothing but inspire you forever. Taylor could speak
he worked and it paid off. Amazing. Yeah.
Exactly. But they don't tell you what's going on. Exactly. They tell you nothing. They tell you maybe 5 minutes and they give you an example. They don't say Amway, or at least they didn't back then. They gave you an example where they draw the stick person and they say, you can go over to this traditional store and spend your money, get a product. That's it. Or you can go to your own version of Amazon. You get a product, but you also get a, quote, kickback. And then they also talked about a link where somebody created a link that was through Amazon. They would tell people, go to that link, and they are supporting like a charity or somebody else. And that's how they say you and your family can support you and your own business like Amazon. Nowhere in there are they talking about Amway. They're not really even talking about a business. They inspire you immediately, and then they briefly tell you that's how they keep you hooked, and that's how they groom you into this process. Because even through the, quote, process, they will tell you if you ask a question that either the person you're asking doesn't know the answer to, or they don't want to answer it the wrong way, they will tell you, oh, that's a premature question. We'll go over that later.
Emphasis on what quote unquote wrong means, because I've heard that before. I want to answer this properly. And it's like, oh yeah, okay, what's properly?
Okay. You ever watch BoJack Horseman? Ever watch that show? Okay.
Never.
Shout out BoJack Horseman. I have a BoJack Horseman tattoo. It is my favorite show of all time. So good. There is an episode of BoJack Horseman called Shenanigans. Okay. Shenanigans is an episode of BoJack that says that improv is a cult. Improv is not a cult, but it's just a funny play on these like kind of cult things. And while he's like trying to go into improv, it was like a Scientology building was right next to it. And it's like, oh, improv's a cult, but Scientology isn't. And it was like a joke. Anyway, the point of it is, when we were in Worldwide, Nolan and Rianne, one of the things they would always preach to us was they were not privileged. They were like, we weren't making a lot of money. We were living in a crappy apartment. That this is something that they would always preach to us, being like, we just worked hard and we did it. And in this episode of BoJack, they go on this like cruise and show that they're all living in like really crappy like quarters and stuff. Like it's just dirty mattresses on the floor, and like that's how everybody lives. And then the main guy, Copernicus, has like a poster in his room and a tunnel into like this big, beautiful room. And it's like, you were hiding this from all of us. And it's like, you said you were sleeping on a mattress on the floor too, but you really weren't. And like, that's how cults kind of get you. But Nolan and Rianne were making $180,000 a year combined in 2009. I don't know what that is today, before the business. Like that was their income as two people. Like Nolan was almost in the NHL. Like his parents could pay for him to go into the NHL. And he came back and was like, I wasn't privileged. And I was like, you have a very different mindset of what privilege is. Definition of and you're saying like, I just worked hard and I got to where I was. It's this very like capitalist mindset that we have nowadays. It's like, you keep grinding. If you keep working hard, you're going to get there. But there's actually a 95% chance you're going to end up in the same income bracket as your parents. Like it's really hard to get out of that income bracket. And if you do, you're an anomaly of a person. So it's like to teach people, hey, you can do this, you can sell this, you can learn about this, like you're going to be able to ascend to heaven, or like whatever these cults are teaching you. Aren't these people lucked out? They were lucked is what happened. And they won't say they were lucked, they were lucked.
Wow.
And they like,
I don't want to give them credit, but their luck wasn't the fact that they worked hard and it paid off. It was very much time and place.
Like, saturated market.
They had the money, right? They had the time to commit to it. They had an untapped market that no one knew and no one had heard of before, Worldwide Dream Builders. Because their direct sponsor was the first one in Canada, or in Alberta at least, right? So it's like, if the luck that you accuse them of, they're kind of right in saying that they weren't lucky that way, but they were lucky in other ways that they don't tell you about. Which is, that's why it's it's kind of a lie.
I know, but that's how you trick people, is what I'm saying. Like, that's how they tricked a lot of us, was being like,
exactly.
we weren't lucky. We
exactly.
just worked hard and grinded, and this is what we got.
Not in the ways
you know what I
think
mean?
we are. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And that's how
Yeah.
I think it's culty.
Yeah, they get a chance to rebrand themselves, and they'll give you a version of their past, but it's never always 100% the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
And that really, what reminds me of that cult Nexium, the leader, Keith Raniere, and the guy had many failed businesses. His first business was, it was found to be a pyramid scheme. And then he created, ESP, which I don't remember what that stands for at this time, but then it became Nexium. And essentially what this cult is, to my understanding, I don't have a deep dive into it, but basically this cult was taking people and inspiring them. That's literally all they're doing. Very similar to Worldwide, where they're inspiring people and they're getting people to take these quote courses to learn, I guess, to elevate their lives. But there's never really an end goal. You just continue elevating your life. But then you're so groomed into it that that's how he created the environment to take advantage of women and create this sex slave cult. And you would think, oh my God, that is insane. How do you get to that point? But it's not that different from how we got groomed into Worldwide Dream Builders.
Yep.
Yep. And it all comes down to this bite model. I mean, so behavior control, the first one is you regulate individuals' physical reality. That's where Worldwide Dream Builders will tell you your job sucks. You do not want to be like your parents because they're, maybe they're injured from a work injury, or, they're
putting away
tired.
5/7 to their life and stuff like that. It's like, no.
Yep. That's how they get you to start to question, like, oh, you're right. My dad is always tired. I don't know that I want to be that tired when I'm, 40 or 50. And that is how they start to change your physical reality. They start to make you, like you said, you change your perspective. Your lenses are different. You look around and you're like, oh, no, I totally see. This is justifiable. But then they say, so the number 2 is you dictate where, how, and with whom the member lives and associates or isolates. That's again tied to the same thing. Don't talk to your parents because they don't know. Maybe they're on their second marriage. They can't give you advice. But then they'll also, but then they'll also tell you, if you can live with your parents to save money for your future, do that. Or they'll put together these Worldwide Dream Builder houses where single men would all live together in one house, or single women would all live together in one house. Did you guys not have that?
No.
Oh shit. Right. Let's go. Yep.
They had the same apartment building where they had like an apartment building downtown.
But that wasn't taught.
Like,
that's all. They're kind of on their own.
Like,
I want to be like them. You know,
that was just kind of our way.
Oh, I didn't know
Let
that.
me tell you. So our line of sponsorship underneath the Syrian guy and underneath Taylor, but it was definitely underneath the Syrian guy, where they would put houses together of single men who not always were they were all cross-line too. They were all cross-line, and they were not allowed to, they weren't allowed to be in the house when we had board plans. They do the same thing for females. They would have an entire house where all these people would put together their money, and they would all rent a house with the ultimate goal of getting out of that house because they're building their business. And then you would have people, I had downline in a house together. So we would go to that downline's house for business meetings, and his roommates either had to stay upstairs or they had to leave the house because they're cross-line. They're not in my line of sponsorship, nor are they in Robert's line of sponsorship. Yeah, it was super common.
That's so culty. That is way cultier than anything we dealt with. Oh my God.
I didn't know you guys didn't have that.
God.
No, we didn't have that.
Yeah, no, the big thing about Nolan and Rianne is they really pushed that it wasn't a cult.
And they tried their best to stay normal as
and you know what, they did do a few things, like they let us like eat our own food and drink Red Bulls and do whatever we wanted, because they're like, it's not a cult, like you can do whatever you want, but you're not putting the money into your business.
There's some non-negotiable.
And it's like the power of duplication and like all these things, like they would teach that, but they were like, but you can.
That kind of goes
like,
they would say that?
Yeah, they're like, yeah, you can drink Monster energy drinks, you can do whatever.
But it's like,
so let me tell you real quick, the Syrian guy had a platinum who he went to his house and he pointed out in front of all of his downline. They had a board plan at his house, and he went through every single like brand X thing that he had, and he threw it away. And he was like, you do not have this in your house. You are not duplicatable with doing this. This is an example of you going against your own company. And he would shame people. If we were drinking a Red Bull and one of our uplines saw it, you were shamed. I remember I only drank, the only Red Bull I drank was the one that I snuck into my first family reunion. And because I hadn't been in there long enough, and my leaders, despite the fact that they're doing 300 P or 200 PV at the time because they weren't married, he was supposed to provide products for me, but he didn't have them. He didn't have enough products to provide for me as his downline. So he just kept looking at me. He's like, this is going to be your last Red Bull. This is going to be your last Cliff Bar. From now on, that you're going to only consume Amway products.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I went to my upline, Carol, and I was like, hey, so I just want to let you know I drink a Red Bull a lot. I was like, it's one of my favorite things. And she was like, that's fine. She's like, but does it have the vitamins? Does it have this? I was like, I don't know, but it's $5. So like, it's way cheaper than freaking excess. Like, I was like, I'm poor and I want energy. So, you know. We used to drive to functions drinking Monsters.
We would take the highway and we'd be freaked out that there was an off chance that someone in the vehicle beside us was going to a function too, and they would see us drinking a Monster or something. It was like, because we're not duplicatable. What if they see us? You know, it's like,
like, right. But that's the guilt that they're creating in you. And my previous guest, my previous guest, Taylor, he was talking about how he had done URA and a small community. He's like, how am I supposed to get people to either buy this stuff or try to get in when they're competing with Walmart? They would always push this whole, you're reallocating your dollars or you're spending the same amount. And I want to know, are they going based on convenience store prices here? Because everything that I'm purchasing at a grocery store now is so much cheaper. I mean, a case of excess is $30. I can buy a 24 case of, and you only get 12. I get a 24 case of Monsters for the same price at Costco. And you get twice as many.
But what is the price of freedom? Do you care about your family that much? You'd be willing to pay the extra for your own business.
It's Monster doesn't pay you. Costco doesn't pay you.
It's not going to get you free.
Going back to this bite model as well, do you ever like question when you were at functions, like, why does Amway sell energy drinks? Is it because they're depriving us of sleep?
That is a good question.
I was like, okay, they're providing us rhodiola, like these energy boosters, like the twist tubes, stuff like that. I was like, these are all energy inducing. These are all like things, you know? And then they would be like, you can live off of the diet from your store. You don't need to buy anything for groceries because you take the double X and then you have nutrition.
Then you have protein bars.
So it was like,
and all you got to do is pass kidney stones every so often.
Seriously. Well, those products, like, they're fine every once in a while. You know, again, we have no beef with the Amway Corporation. They're just a distribution company, but you're having an entire cult-like model teaching you, and they're regulating your diet. That is number 5 on Stephen Hasan's, bite model of the behavior control aspect. And then literally number 6, Hope, you've talked about this many times. So number 6 is manipulation and deprivation of sleep. You literally would say things like, we were at functions, we were at board plans, we were so tired, we were so hungry. And then you question, like, why are they selling us energy drinks? And I think the way that they pushed the energy drinks is probably different than the way Amway would. I don't think Amway is out here saying, like, buy our energy drinks, but Worldwide is pushing it because they know they're sleep depriving you. They know that they are changing your food intake, and plus that's manipulation and deprivation. And I personally believe that because of the functions, the reason why they were so like motivational for us is because we were so tired. We only had their energy to feed off of. That's all we had. And they would always save the biggest for last. Of course,
the guy who talked the longest. The
guy who talked the longest.
Or the founder of Worldwide's wife. And God rest his soul. You know, we don't want anybody to die. And of course, you know, he was whatever, but he passed away. It is sad. But the wife, she would always speak. And by that point, I was always like, I don't think I ever knew what she was saying because I was so tired. But then we'd have to be there the next day.
That was purposeful.
It's brutal. And then you have to be up for like the church function the next day. Like, they did this stuff on purpose. And Like,
there's no way they're not.
Like, and then they run board plans until like 1 o'clock in the morning. You get home at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. You're starving. You got to eat. Then you got to go to sleep and be at work the next day, and then be like, "Oh, I hate my job because I'm so sleepy." And it's like, that's not why. That's not why you're sleepy. Like, it's you know.
Exactly. Okay. So there's a couple more here that I'm like reading down. I'm like, oh my God, that's so true. Because then you go down to number 9, majority of time is spent with group indoctrination and rituals and or self-indoctrination, including the internet. So that's a huge, we would always be in board plans. There was a board plan, if not every week, maybe every other week, but I know for us, we would have them every single week. And it wasn't just our direct upline. It would be maybe our upline who would do a board plan, maybe, you know, Taylor's upline somewhere in there. And there's always something that we're being forced to do. That also includes core. Core is another part of the ritual of self-indoctrination. You're being forced to read specific books. And those books would always be very specific. And I just made this realization yesterday, and how how the upline diamonds are allegedly, of course, I say that because I don't have any certain proof that they're making money off of the apps, because we would buy these stupid books off of those damn apps. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, exactly.
They would discourage Amazon. And then that kind of goes over to information control. You're only allowed to read these books. You're not, you know, they would discourage us from social media. Don't be on social media. You're quote wasting your time. But in reality, if you're on social media,
on the book list.
Or listen to their audios.
Their audios. And you have to do this stuff every day, every week, every month, every year. Like, and it was ritualistic. And it was like, they would literally do incentives, and all you get was a free pizza. Like,
exactly.
A 3-month incentive every day of this stuff that you'd have to do, and they'd bring you over for an afternoon.
I did it
and
once,
keep you up
and
late.
It was hell. Like, it, and I only did it because I wanted to hang out and see Dawn and Mary's house. That was it.
Yeah, that was the inspiration. That was you want the association. Be there because, you know, you want to be there. You want to be around these upline that you don't get to see. That is the carrot that they hang in front of us, that you want this association. And one thing that Taylor also said was that while he was in, so this is Taylor, my previous guest, not Taylor, the club owner. When he was in URA, he said that when he was going to this function, he expected to actually learn something. He really goes into fantastic detail where he says, I go to a concert, I know what I'm expecting. I'm, you know, paying for goods and services. I pay them, they play music. I enjoy my time. Fair trade. But when he was talking about how he went to a function, he's like, all they did was hype you up. They didn't do anything. He's like, I expected to have some sort of sales seminar where you're learning how to sell things, maybe dialogue back and forth. Maybe like,
you're right.
But it's just a hype up. They would always say it's not hype up, sign up, but that's all it is.
It's just hype up. There's no sign up.
Is pretend for 3 meetings, and then they would get you in. Like, that's all you had to do. Was
the next time someone approaches me, I'm gonna fake it and see if I get launched. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna try to see how far I can go.
Please get in.
If I can get 6 of my friends,
I was like, if I could get 6 of my friends to go legal and we could speak, it would be like, hey,
if I could name drop Dexter Yeager and name drop Brit Worldwide, or like if I could do anything, just being like, everyone put your hands together for the fastest eagles that we've seen in a long time. It's like,
I also want to talk about point 15 here, the threaten to harm to friends and family, or family and friends. I was like looking at that, I was like, they didn't really do that. And then I was like, oh, they kind of did. And I was like, if you think about it, they were like, if you don't build this business, your children are gonna have working parents, or like, you know, like weird stuff like that, and your parents are gonna be in a retirement home, or like you're not gonna be able to take care of like blah blah blah. Like, that is a pretty big threat.
They would do things like threaten the police if you didn't give their
books back.
The stuff back, like their demo package and stuff like that. They'd call the police.
The black box.
Black box. Like all of these stuff past 15 or so, it gets pretty like hefty, violent and illegal, like blatantly immoral and stuff. But that's why worldwide it's such a hard thing to, like, it is a cult, don't get me wrong, it is a cult, but it's not in the ways that are infamous, you know what I mean, like the beating and the raping and the, you know what I mean, and separation of families and stuff. But it definitely has the less egregious stuff, you know what I mean, like deception, and financial,
and that's how they get you, because you wouldn't think that, oh, it's just an innocent like MLM, but it really does have very similar characteristics to even Jonestown, because no, they're not doing like 19 kidnapping, 20 beating, or 21 torture, but I would really kind of say that they almost in a weird way kind of advocate for number 22. And number 22 is, trigger warning, it's rape. And the reason why I say that is love and respect, because love and respect really starts to blur the lines for consent. And it really starts to put you in a position where if you don't sleep with your husband, he's going to cheat on you and it's all your fault.
100%.
Tell me how that
manipulation. That is coercion. Coercion and lack of consent are almost the same thing. Like they are like
100%.
Like that is a lack of consent, is coercion. Being like, if you do this, I'll do that. Like that's like bribery. You can't bribe a cop. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's not healthy. Like,
no, it's not. Yeah, that book is horrible. And that's where
both of those were combined in the same thing. Like, what a monstrous thing. Like, to have love and respect in worldwide, like that's should be illegal. Like it's
dangerous.
Illegal, though. That's the thing. Worldwide is technically illegal, but nobody will go out and speak about it because they have so much around them. That's why the cult is such a good thing, is because they have so much protection from the people that
this
are
goes
in
back to what you said about Amway not wanting to force feed you energy drinks. Is we listened to a podcast, can't remember the name of it now, but
Life After MLM.
Life After MLM. Shout out to Life After MLM.
Yeah.
So
I started listening.
They had someone on there, I don't know the guy's name. He was kind of an expert on the history of Amway, not the history of Worldwide or any of those, but Amway specifically. And he would name drop things like Bill Britt and Dexter Yeager. Dexter Yeager, he's not a good name that's in Worldwide. So Worldwide hates when you mention Dexter Yeager because he was, I can't remember exactly his influence. But they very much, the essence of the podcast that I got from it was Amway knows about the doings that Worldwide and those types of business models do, with where they exploit people and they coerce them, and they have all these bite model red flags and stuff like that of authority, the model of authoritarian control here. So Amway knows that Worldwide and all them do that, but they're so effective at selling products because of the adherence to Ditto and the loyalty to the brand and doing things quote unquote for yourself, stuff like that. It's so effective at selling products. It's almost what made Amway what it is. So they're kind of stuck with them. It's like a parasite. So they get, if they were to replace Worldwide, another model similar to Worldwide would inevitably take its place, because they're kind of the who needs sales reps or wholesalers when you have specific influencers designed to create a customer base for you. That's why Amway's so unique. And that's why there's always these legal disputes that Worldwide would always say, like, Amway doesn't like Worldwide, or we're not Amway. Like, they really clarify we're not Amway, and they don't like to name drop right away, is because they butt heads for that reason. And no one ever says that. They don't say they butt heads because Worldwide is parasitic to Amway.
Yeah.
They say we don't want to do Amway because we're not an MLM, which is such a lie, because it's so weird, because they say they're not an MLM, but Amway doesn't want to do with them because they're the MLM, and Amway's trying not to be. They're trying to be Walmart,
exactly,
right? But they're forced to have these Worldwide dream builders sell their products for them.
Yeah. And I do just want to mention that this is the opinion of the podcast host that is for, what did you say one more time? Life After MLM, which, shout out, go listen to them. I'm starting to listen. So there's so much, but I also want to say that this is all alleged purely for legal reasons. And it is based on that person's opinion, and this is for commentary purposes, but we're allowed to have our opinions. So I just want to make that quick disclaimer here, but you're not wrong. And I think the fact that nobody talks about Amway as well is very suspicious. There's not a lot of people out there, they're trying to silence people. And I remember that Zay and Melody had mentioned the fact that they were threatened with I think a cease and desist or some sort of legal document that was like, hey, stop doing this. And that's why, again, I throw so many disclaimers out there, because I'm not trying to get sued. We're just trying to speak on the experiences that we have. But it's also fair to compare our experience with other cult-like environment experiences as well. That's fair too.
Exactly.
And we're actually coming on probably about 5 minutes to us have been talking for an hour. So it really sounds like there's going to be a part 2 to this, which we all love a part 2 because I'm telling you, this bite model, there's so much in here that I think is worth talking about. And are there any final thoughts that you guys have that you want to share?
I wanted to share, have you heard of the TV show On Becoming God in Central Florida?
I have not.
You need to watch it.
Kirsten Dunst?
It's Kirsten Dunst, like from Spider-Man. And it's about Amway. And it
No
is
way.
Well, not really
like
Dex
no,
Yeager,
but it is
Brit
insane. Like they talk
thinking
about
and
the
stuff like
1,000
that.
tape stare. They talk about
Stinking
like
thinking and stuff like that.
your
That's
job, like that.
yeah.
That's all in this show, and it is. I watched the first
Oh,
episode,
it hurts, man.
and Fyscher was like, I don't know if I can
Please
watch
turn
this
this off.
because it's so familiar.
It was so accurate.
And the wife starts to get like, and then they have like this little wife group of like, this is how to submit to your husbands, and like it's. I highly recommend watching that. I'm trying to look at where you can watch it on.
I think the premise of the show is that guy tries
Apple
to retire
TV.
early. Premise is he tries to retire early and dies in like a freak accident or
He
something.
gets eaten by an alligator.
Yeah, so he gets eaten by an alligator.
Totally wild.
And then she's dealing with the fallout of all this, where he tried to leave his job early. So he quits his job, getting free when he was too soon. He wouldn't make the money.
Supposed to like,
but he was, you know what I mean? He was hyped up saying it's been 5 years. You're ready, man. You're ready. So he quits his job and then dies. Yeah. And now she's like stuck, So it's with this ideological thinking and stuff. It's pretty funny.
It is such
So what's the show one more time? What's it called?
On Becoming God in Central Florida. I think Zay and Melody talked about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they've talked about it.
Perfect.
On Becoming God. Yeah.
Okay. Absolutely. We'll definitely check it out. But yeah, I mean, this is a topic that I don't think will ever go away. I'm never going to not talk about this because it's such an important topic. And I love the fact that people
tell everybody.
And I'm so grateful for everybody who has reached out. A lot of people, I'm telling you guys, reach out because of you guys sharing your story. It means a lot to me that so many people have felt compelled to come. And even if they don't want to share it on the podcast, just being able to talk about it with people who are relatable, it really does make a huge difference. And you guys have definitely come on time and time again. People love you guys. And
in that case, I'd say if there is anybody else out there that relates to Hope and I or you, Danny, you really should try to get your voice out there because it's first of all, it's going to be hard. Like there's nothing you can really do legally against these people. Like you can do what you can as an individual, which is spreading awareness and stuff like that. And I would encourage you guys to do that, like come on the podcast, start your own, tell your friends and family, like teach people or do something, because this stuff it's incredibly damaging and people don't even know what's happening. Like
exactly.
And the way they trick you is relevant to everybody. So if you can't, I've heard cult experts and stuff say, well, if people think they would never do it, I'm here to tell you, you would 100% fall for a cult if someone were to try to recruit you and they were to try to trick you, especially if they're some of the worst and more infamous ones. You can't blame them for falling into it, right? So I would just say, try to come on the podcast or spread awareness or do whatever you can if you're brave enough, because anything helps. You try to help people. I don't want to have people waste all their money or feel like they're going crazy or lose relationships with their family or their friends. Like I don't want that to happen at all to anybody. So if anyone out there listening to this can help that, then please do your part to do that,
Yeah. And if there's a fear behind it, you can come on anonymously. Like I said, we change all of the names, but realistically, they can't legally do anything because we're not slandering people. We're not giving false information or saying that all of like we're not doing the definition of slander. We're not saying that X person did this horrible act without a shadow of a doubt, which is not what we're doing. We're not speaking in absolutes against these people. We're sharing our personal experiences. And that's why it's legal. So don't be scared. I know a lot of people have come to me and they're like, I don't want to share it. I'm kind of scared. And that's okay too. It's totally okay. If you want me to share your story anonymously, I can do that too. And I am just so grateful for all of the listeners who have given support to this podcast, because
Mhm.
toxic relationships is such an important topic. Domestic violence, there's 10 million people who go through domestic violence, and that's all that's being reported. That's
Yeah.
not what's going unreported. And organizations like this, unfortunately, can lead to those types of relationships. And
and it's
I
a
can
hook
attest
for
to
a lot
that.
of people too that are looking for a way to save themselves or something. It's like
Yeah.
they prey on people like that at the same time. So it's this
Yeah.
people, organizations like Worldwide and stuff are not even on people's radar, and they should be. This should be.
Yeah.
For how much damage they do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for your time. We really appreciate it. It just means so
Thanks for
much.
having
And
us.
yeah, we're excited to do a part 2. So stay tuned. Do you guys want to plug your Instagram? I know last time you guys did. You can do it again.
Yeah, I'm hella private. So I got like
She'll vet
I got a
you.
new follower and I was like, who are you? And I was like trying to vet
Who-
them. So I was like, I have my baby on my Instagram. So it's hope.crawl, Kraal. That's me.
My Instagram, FYSCHER. Wait, FYSCHMEISTER. Fish mice.
Okay, go ahead and send me those and I'll post
Yeah.
them.
I
Cool.
was like, you could just look at mine, and then Fyscher's tagged on a bunch of stuff. But the time to look at would be if you want to creep my posts from like 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19.
those are all
Those are
Worldwide.
when I was in Worldwide. So you can see how indoctrinated I was back
Mine's
then. I never
pretty
deleted anything because I like the memory of it,
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely follow these guys on Instagram. They will vet you and make sure that you're not creeping for previous upline. Don't have malicious intent. Don't be an asshole, because these people are just out here trying to help. So follow them on Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at @XSNT_podcast, TikTok at @XSNT_podcast. You can hear us on Spotify, Apple Music, and potentially YouTube in the future. So who knows? Anyways,
That would
thanks
be fun.
everybody. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night, and we'll catch you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.